Outstanding. Thank you.
You ready to go live?
Yeah.
All right. You live?
We're live?
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you, Bubby. Hey, what's going on, YouTube? If you're watching this on YouTube Live, it's Saturday. I know it's an odd time for us to be on doing a podcast on Saturday, but we have some special guests for you today, okay? If you're listening to this on audio, it's probably Wednesday, so it's your normal Wednesday episode. I'm imagining that's how this is going to work out. So, YouTube, thank you guys for being here for this special episode with some very special guests. We have got the one and only Caleb Gadwall Shuffler in the house, along with his father, and no stranger to the 3 of 7 podcast or 3 of 7 project, our brother Paul Wilder. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Is that Paul Wilder? Is that Paul? Is it Junior?
Nope.
Nope. It's just straight Paul Wilder. Huh?
Donald Paul. My dad's Donald. And
Okay.
My granddad's Paul.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Half and half.
What's up with you, Gadwall, man? What's happening, brother?
Not much.
Well, what a pleasure it is to have you on the podcast today. You know, I named you after a duck. A Gadwall is a duck. And I kind of feel like we've got me and you with the beards, we've got the Duck Dynasty thing going on in here today, man.
Yeah, just probably don't have quite as many ducks, especially since I ain't hunted at all this season from all the running.
Oh man, I had a duck hunt scheduled this year, and I had to cancel it. I overbooked myself. I was really bummed about that, man. I was really bummed about that because this place that I go duck hunting, the one time a year I do go, it's in Oklahoma, and it's just unbelievable. I mean, you actually see thousands of ducks, and you're just killing ducks the whole time. Like,
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I know about, seeing them on the Coosa River about 6 miles up, just, probably heading to Mexico. And they're like, oh, look, hey, there's ducks up there, but they ain't coming down.
yeah. So when y'all duck hunt around here,
It's more just bird watching, actually. It's, you put out a bunch of decoys and get really cold and walk in the water and stuff, but it's mainly just looking at some ducks fly real high.
how do you stick with it, man? I mean, if you're not killing ducks, I mean, is it just the thought of potentially killing a duck? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you finally do it right and they do right. So, like, trying to compare it to deer hunting because you do that a lot more traditional than you do the duck hunting. But, like when you deer hunt, let's say you're stalking an animal or something like that, and you are trying to judge the wind and you have an idea of where it's going to go and where they're going to come out or whatever, and you guess right, and I don't know, it just everything goes according to plan. That's how it is when you do everything when you're duck hunting. So you set up your decoys, you set it up based on the wind, and then if they come in and cup up right into your decoys, it's one of the best feelings in the world. But, I can't speak from very much experience because that rarely happens.
I talked to Corn the other day. Him and Buck went hunting, and they had a good setup. Had eight ducks fly over. They missed every one of them.
good night.
I know Corn used to hunt the same place I used to hunt, so he may have been seeing the same ducks that I missed at. So.
Corn was probably shooting at those ones you were talking about, flying 6 miles high, slinging some pellets up there.
Yeah. Well, you just got to throw the shells. You got to spend some money somehow, so you might as well sling some shells up there.
Yeah, that's true. Duck hunting, talk about spending money. Duck hunting is like the golf of the hunting world.
It is 100%.
You got to have all this stuff, man. That's what was crazy when I'd go out with this dude in Oklahoma and hunt, and I see the amount of crap it takes to do this. Like, I mean, you either need a boat or a massive buggy. You have to build a blind. You've got your decoys. You've got your calls. You've got your shotguns. Then you got your dog. and all that comes along with that. It is a massive operation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the decoys, usually if you get good decoys, they're probably around, for half a dozen really good decoys, you're spending close to $100. And then, half a dozen decoys, if you're actually killing a lot of ducks and you're in a big open area like a big lake or something, then you're going to need a lot more than half a dozen decoys.
Oh, yeah.
You may need, 3 dozen decoys you put out. Now, not every time, but, it's insane how much money you spend so quickly. And
An
you're
old
just
shotgun gets expensive, too. A nice shotgun.
Oh, yeah, because,
Man.
you need, especially if you hunt somewhere like in the cold weather, then you want inertia-driven shotguns.
Mm-hmm.
Because the gas-powered, it messes up and won't go off. Or you drop it in the water, because if you haven't dropped your shotgun in the water and you've duck hunted, then I don't know where you're hunting, because I do it all the freaking time. Yeah. Now, I don't fall in as much as my cousin Jacob. That sucker goes in every single time we go. We're leaving, packing up. He's under the water immediately. Jacob actually, he hunts with Corn sometimes, but not all the time. Him, Corn, and Shorty sometimes hunt together.
Sounds like he needs to go to SEAL training. He likes that cold water, obviously.
Nah, he just can't keep his feet. I don't know why he has so much trouble when he gets in them waders, but he goes in every time. But I can't say anything. Every time my hands get in that water, I was telling Dad about this the other day, I throw up. Every time, because it's like it gets so cold. When it's like 18 degrees and your hands go in the water, I'm like, that pain of them freezing, I throw up every single time.
Dang.
But I'm just telling you, man.
They Paul to puking. Dang, Gadwall.
Every single time.
Yeah, man. I don't understand how you do it. I don't understand how you duck hunt. I mean, how many ducks do you, if you hunted hard in a season here in Georgia, how many ducks would you kill?
I know some people that do it a lot better than I do, and they kill. The main thing you're killing around here is wood ducks and mallards. And so they kill, maybe their limit every weekend of wood ducks, and then sometimes they kill 1 or 2 mallards. But usually, you may kill, like I said, I think a limit of wood ducks is 6 wood ducks. And so you can only kill 6 a day. And usually people only get to hunt on Saturdays because of, like you talked about, how big of an operation it is to get everything out there. It's like, the 100-mile race when we did that. It was the same start time is what I've been on the Coosa River at probably 1 o'clock in the morning before, just getting to the spot, and we had to pick up the boat over a beaver dam and then throw it over there and then throw out the decoys and then take a nap and eat and all that kind of stuff before you even get to start. So you're wore out before you start.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just don't know how people do it around here, because when I go duck hunting, there's a guy that's being paid to be there that does all the decoys. He has the dogs. I don't have to do anything, dude. When I go duck hunting, I don't have to blow a call. Like, all I do is just steadily shoot ducks all day. That's all I do. And so, but I'm watching this dude, this guide, that he's having to get in and out of the water and do the decoys, and his hands are frozen. And he doesn't puke when his hands get cold, but
that's a unique trait I have.
I'm like, man, this is way too much daggone work. Like, even if I lived in the duck flyway where these cats are at, I'm like, nah, I wouldn't do this.
Well, it's worse there. Like, so my cousin Jacob said before opening weekend, he went to Arkansas. And so the Thursday before it opened on Saturday, he said that there was somebody parked at the boat ramp. He slept in his truck from Thursday, after he got off work, from Thursday until Saturday.
So there's obviously something to it.
And then, so that guy that did that, he was waiting all that time, and the spot he was trying to get to was like a well-known spot or something. I don't know.
He wanted to be there first.
Yeah, he wanted to be there first. So the guy that came that morning, hadn't been waiting in line, showed up, because if you get to the spot first, it's your spot. Shows up. There's a guy that comes up, puts on a pair of New Balances and grabs his shotgun and sprints to the spot. There's through the woods on the public land, and gets there before the guy that had been there since Thursday.
Holy smokes. So there must be something to it. If somebody's going to suffer that greatly and wait that long to get in a dang spot to kill a duck, it's like, I don't know. It's weird how there's so many different things out there that people really, really love to do. And I just can't understand it. We compared duck hunting with golf. Golf's the same thing. I'm like, why on earth, if you had a day off, would you go and dress up in your silly clothes and go hit a ball into a hole? It's literally mind-boggling to me. Now I'd be more apt to duck hunt than I would to golf. There's so many things, though, man, that people just are obsessed with that it's like I don't know. What do you think causes that?
Well, it's a passion. It's not, what is the Mossy Oaks or Real Tree slogan? It's a obsession, not a passion or something.
I don't know
Yeah,
at all what it
that's-
is. But, yeah,
People get obsessed over it.
Oh, yeah, I can say for me, it's the amount of work that you have to put into it when it comes to duck hunting. That's why I like it so much more than deer hunting or any other kind of hunting I've done, is because of how much more work goes in on your day that you go work. Like, you show up, like I said, you'll show up. I don't think I've ever been to a spot later than getting there at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so that means I'm already drove an hour to wherever I was going or whatever.
Well, I had way more success duck hunting
Yeah, he did.
than anybody.
Well, y'all
than
went duck
anybody
shooting.
he
That
knows.
doesn't count.
But we put corn. We grew corn in a pond that we would bring down a little bit and bring up.
Now, was this in South Georgia?
Yes, sir. in
Allegedly,
Cochran County.
allegedly put up corn.
And my granddaddy and my uncle we would rotate ponds, and we wouldn't hunt them but once or twice a year. We go to that pond either in the morning or in the evening, and then go to the next pond, and then go to the next pond, and then go to the next pond. And most of the time when we went to those ponds, my Uncle Ronald or my granddad had already scouted it, and they knew this is going to be a good hunt. And you were pretty much guaranteed, and it was mostly wood duck, they were going to come in and you were going to be able to do some business. And we didn't use a different gun. I used a 20 gauge that I shot quail with, I shot dove, and I shot duck. We drove 2-wheel drive trucks because the fields, if they were too wet to get, if you had to have a 4-wheel drive truck to get in the field, you're going to ruin your crop anyway. You need to stay out of the field till it dries. It was a lot simpler, but I killed some ducks.
That's where these guys are screwing up.
Yeah, they're working
They've
too hard.
overcomplicated the whole thing.
They're working
That's
too
the
hard.
fun part, though. Like, that's when you actually have it. Like, even every single morning, if we go out, I mean, I've been skunked plenty of times. But, like, even when I get skunked, I'm like, man, this absolutely sucked to do all this, set everything up, and then just pack it all up and do absolutely nothing. But it was still a good time.
Caleb brings a whole new meaning to embrace the suck. Like, he doesn't just embrace it. He embroiders it and, like, puts it on.
I don't know.
Hey,
It's just a fun time. I mean, just because also the difference
seen-
between that and deer hunting is you're in there with your buddies just hanging out, chilling.
Well, that's true. It can be cool in a duck blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One time I pulled up over at Paul's house. Caleb had a bucket of ice water out there, and he was just putting his hands in it and puking. Just reps, just puking. Did it about 15 times.
I wasn't there.
Nice.
Got to just keep putting in the reps. You don't want it to catch you by surprise on duck blind day.
Good night. So are you kind of how do you feel? Are you kind of glad that you got this race under your belt and that, like, you can wind down training? Not that you're going to stop running, but now that you have some more time opened up, you don't have to stay so focused on training. Are you looking forward to that? Because it's still duck season, isn't it?
Yeah, it ends at the end of January. But I mean, to be honest with you, that just made it worse. Like, finishing that race just made it worse.
Really?
Like, I will not probably I enjoy duck hunting, but I'm just not in a stage right now where I want to go do that instead of going and running. Like, running sucks a lot worse, and I enjoy it a lot more because there's a lot more payout. I'll tell you, I get done with a run every time I go out. I don't always kill ducks.
Yeah.
And
That's
so-
a good point. And while I got you here too, man, I wanted to talk to both you guys, but especially Caleb, about the trades, because I'm a huge advocate for trades. And you're an electrician, right?
Yes, sir.
So, I I get so sick of seeing the general population moan and groan about the fact that they're freaking broke and there's no way to make money, and you know, it's just such a hard, you know, place to be able to make a living in, and you're just freaking constantly broke and poopy pants, and you can't have the things you want out of life. And I'm all the time I'm thinking, like, no, if you will just learn a skill, if you will just learn a trade, you can literally make as much money as you want to make.
Oh, yeah.
You can work as much as you want to work. So, you know, Paul is a teacher. What drove you into the trades versus going a more traditional route? I mean, because trades has for a long time been viewed as non-traditional. Even when I was growing up, if you were going into the trades, it was a whole different pipeline in high school. It was like you were like the dumb person. Mm-hmm. You know, how stupid are we? Mm-hmm. How freaking stupid are we, man? But what drove you to go that route? And it seems to be working out for you.
Yeah, it's going well. So I went to Georgia Highlands for a little while after I got out of high school. So it isn't because I'm stupid that I went into the trade. So that's, you know, like you said, they have the dumb stereotype or whatever. It's not because I'm stupid. I mean, I graduated with a 4.0 and a Zell Miller scholarship, which basically pays for all your college. And so I started going to Georgia Highlands, and I definitely wasn't as diligent as I should have been when I was there, but I was working and doing the classes and all that kind of stuff. But I was going for engineering because I was really good at physics. Physics just made sense because chemistry, when we took those classes, it was just like, okay, this is all fake crap. Like, it was all just possibilities. But physics was like, okay, this is how you calculate how fast this car is going or whatever. It was real life's math. And so it just clicked with me. And so I was like, well, that's what engineering is a bunch of physics. So I was like, I can do that. Well, then I started, you know, looking up and figuring out, like, what jobs people actually have in the engineering world. And I was like, man, this is, like, you know, not necessarily what I want to do. Like, and there's nothing wrong with it. Everybody, you know, has their own thing that they enjoy doing. I just wanted to be more hands-on, I guess. And some of the jobs just didn't seem that fun. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I want to do. So I changed my major to just general, basically, or whatever. What's it called?
Business is what you did, right?
Yeah. And then it went to regular, whatever the normal one is, no major or something like that.
Yeah.
General studies, that's what it is. Anyways, I went from that to that, and I was working at Chick-fil-A at the time, and just basically paying for some of my, you know, just little things that I was doing, getting gas and all that kind of stuff, and hanging out, and my girlfriend at the time, you know, hanging out with her and all that kind of stuff. And so I was working there, and I was like, you know what, let me look into some of this lineman stuff. And so I started looking at some of the lineman stuff, but the only thing that I wasn't a huge fan with that was how it wasn't separate from, I guess, big industries. So it was, every time I looked at the ones around here anyways, it always had a lot more ties to unions and ties to all these other things.
Yeah, you can't go start your own business as a lineman.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with the union. I just did not want it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, let me look at these other fields. And then my pastor James Cordell, he talked to
otherwise known as Jeff Cordell. The story behind that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he said, you know, he had some stuff get done at the church at the time, and he talked to my old boss and asked him, hey, like, y'all need help? And my old boss said, yeah. And so he says, well, I know this kid, he's a hard worker, and, you know, would you like to give him a job? You know, here's his number and all this other kind of stuff. Then James called me and told me to call him. And so I called him, and I ended up, you know, long story short, I ended up working for him for a while, for 3 years. And in that 3 years, I fell in love with the electrical work that I was doing, just because I was like, man, I see my finished product every day. That's the biggest thing for me, is you could get done and see your product.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing that was frustrating with a lot of other jobs. You think about it, it's not concrete. It may be more abstract, you know, how it looks when it's done. But with this, I was like, okay, I know what it's supposed to look like. I can see how it's going to look. And I'm helping people build their dream homes, wiring them up, doing it the way I would want my house done, and enjoying work every single day because I'm still hanging out. I mean, you basically hang out with guys all day while you're working.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can work your tail off and still talk the entire time. I mean, it's not bad. So, I mean, I just have stuck with it. And then I went to Toyo Tire for a little while to basically get insurance to have my child. But then after that, I'm working with another guy now, and I'm having a great time. So I've just really fallen in love with the work, the camaraderie that's around it. But, yeah, I would definitely suggest going into the trades because, like you said, the money's there. I mean, we turn down work all the time because we don't have enough people.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we're in Rockmart.
Yeah.
It's
Which is a dead zone.
It's me, my boss, and two firefighters. They're full-time firefighters, and they work with us part-time, and then one other guy. And so we can't do all the work. And we still, you know, are just running rampant trying to keep up with everything.
Yeah. It's literally endless. You can take it as far you get the opportunity to take it as far as you want to take it.
Yep.
I mean, you can just keep working with this dude, or 5, 6, 7 years from now, you can decide to branch off and start your own operation, and then you can grow that literally as it's an infinite opportunity because the work's always going to be there. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be more of it there than you can even get to
because of the electric car crap that everybody's coming up with. You know, they're just making it worse. Like me and John Hogue were talking about. They're making it worse on the grid, which is just giving us more work. So, like, you know, John said, we have complete job security because the people in charge just keep adding more and more to the electrical grid. So we're like, okay, well.
You know what, dude? Ain't no homeowner gonna touch nothing that's got electricity running through it. That's why, like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said if he was also in the trades, and he was like, if I could recommend one trade to get into, it's electrician.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, I'll get into crawl space and work on my plumbing a little bit. You know, I'll work on my HVAC, you know, a little bit here and there. Just, you know, I'll YouTube it, whatever. If it's got electricity running through it, though, I'm not touching it. I'm calling a professional.
I used to till now I got family.
Yeah. I ain't messing with it, man. So I just commend you for doing that, man. It's and I wish more people would do it. And I wish people wouldn't be so in their when they get in their 30s or their 40s or their 50s and they're broke, they can't have the things they want. They're working some freaking crap job. I wish they wouldn't be so closed-minded to learning something like what you've learned, man. Like, anybody who wants to put in the effort and the work, and anybody who wants to seek out the opportunity to learn these things, you can learn it at any phase in life. It's never too late. And I don't think that I think that people stay in a rut their whole life financially and in their career because I think people believe that it's not supposed to be hard. Or they can't understand that, like, no, they can't understand that if you actually want to achieve some success financially or in your professional life, it's going to take effort, which means it's going to be uncomfortable. Effort is not comfortable. And so they just don't get it. They just think it's not supposed to, well, we live in America, right? It's not supposed to be that hard. It doesn't matter how free you are. It doesn't matter what country you're in. If you want to have success, it's going to be hard.
Yep. I think something too, you know, I never forget, we had my cousin who works for SpaceX. She works for, she's like the head of Dragon Project or DragonNet or something. They shoot manned rockets to the space station. She graduated from Georgia Tech. Her husband graduated from Georgia Tech. He works for NASA. And I had her come speak to the school about STEM. And she said something to we were talking about women of STEM and that kind of stuff, and she said something that I thought, wow. She basically told the girls, don't decide you want to be a rocket scientist because I'm telling you you can do that. You have to find your passion and do what you want to do. And that's the thing with Caleb, when he left Toyo and went back to the electrical work, I could tell there was so much more peace and joy. He said, when we went on vacation, we go to Thanksgiving. Every year we go to Destin for Thanksgiving. And he said, I'm looking forward to the break and being with family, but I'm not like going to be miserable going back to work because every day there's something different. Every day there's different challenges. And what I would encourage people is like, hard is relative. Getting a degree is hard. Not getting a degree, learning a trade and working hard is hard. And then what I told Caleb, what did I tell you at the very beginning? It's not what you make, but what you spend, right? And so you can make a living doing a lot of different things as long as you keep yourself under control and don't act crazy spending. But what I think a lot of times people do is they look around at everybody else instead of looking inside. Galatians chapter 6 talks about in the Message, don't compare yourself to other people and don't think too highly of yourself, but find out what the Lord's called you to do and give yourself wholly to that. And I think a lot of times we even over spiritualize that. Whatever you're doing, do it hard. Work. Do it hardly as unto the Lord. The reason Caleb's been successful is because he works hard. When he was at Chick-fil-A, he worked hard and moved up. When he was at the other place, he worked hard and got his own truck. When he was at Toyo, he was producing more than most of the people around him. And that's what helps you be successful. And you'll stand out. It doesn't matter what you do. If you do it heartily as unto the Lord and you don't grow weary in well-doing, you're going to reap. And the reason that works is because it's in there.
That's what I was going to say. Was me and Blake and Dad had a conversation on a run a while back. And I told Dad this, and then I talked to Blake and Dad about it on the run. But a lot of times I feel like we think when we pray for, God to bless us with whether it be money or something else, whatever you're asking for. He definitely wants to do it, obviously. I mean, he wouldn't tell you to ask for things if he doesn't, if he thinks that's going to be bad for you, he won't give it to you. But the whole thing is, why does he have to grant you something else extra other than the sowing and reaping aspect that's in the Bible? So why does he owe you anything more than creating a system where if you put in hard work, you get in good results?
Yeah, man.
And so why do you expect more? And
he's made that available to you.
Exactly. And then everything else, he still will do above and beyond what that is. And so it's just all a bonus. But if you just sit there and say, hey, God made this world for me to prosper and be better than everybody else if I'm willing to put in the work. And that's not, talking about obviously works-based faith or anything like that. That's just talking about on this earth.
That's a law of nature.
Right, exactly.
It's a law
like
of
gravity.
nature. Yeah.
But nature was created by God, and that's the whole thing. We talked about it before you got here. We were talking about the parable of the sower is the kingdom of God. Like a man who went out and it starts, the Bible says, keep your heart with all diligence. So hard work starts in the heart first. If you keep your heart with all diligence, then your heart will lead your mouth, and your mouth will lead your life. And that's the whole, like Romans 10:9-10, that if thou confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in thine heart that God has raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved, set free, delivered. That's the whole kingdom, is take care of your heart, get your mouth to follow your heart, and be a doer of what that is. And when you sow and when you plant a seed and you tend to it, you take care of it, you make sure there's no weeds, you water it, you do whatever you got to do. And then some of that you have no control over it because sometimes you can't water it. You have to trust God to water it, right? And other people sometimes have to help you. When I worked on a farm, we had to get other people sometimes to crop dust for us and spray for worms because we couldn't get in the field because it was too wet. And I think that's one of the things that it doesn't matter. Our society has got to get back to the basics of the principles of the Word of God, because it doesn't matter if you're an electrician, if you're an administrator, school teacher, if you're, it doesn't matter what you're doing, if it doesn't line up with the kingdom purposes and principles that God has already established. He's not reestablishing and changing the rules for you based on your heart.
Yeah.
Your heart has to be, everything was made by him and for him, and without him, nothing consists. And so I think one of the things that, really impressed me and blessed me with Caleb is when he and Krista got pregnant, when she got pregnant, a switch flipped in that dude. I mean, a switch. Immediately. He's already a hard worker and a good dude. But when we'd go on runs, he'd talk about how he wants her to see. He wants her to set a higher standard and not to look around and just see the laziness and the complacency of society around him. If he wants her to see that, the only way he can make sure she sees that is if he is that. And that's, I'll say publicly right now, I'm more proud of that than I am anything else, that he's done.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. Yeah, and all of that, obviously, I completely agree with. And, yeah, when we talk about the laws of nature and we talk about reality and cause and effect and the things that are inescapable, all of that is God's design, right? So that's how we tie that. That's what I mean when I say those things. It's the way it was designed to be. And ultimately, I think that people, when they bump up against that feeling of, ooh, this is a little bit hard. This is a little more than I wanted. Like, this is a little more stress than I wanted to bear. When they bump up against that, then they back off just a hair. And that's why they never end up achieving or getting anything, man. Because that work is always going to feel uncomfortable. And it's always going to be more than you want to bear.
Yep.
Always, man. Like, even for me, to this very day, the work that God has called me into doing is more than I want to bear every single day. I'm just being honest with you. It's more than I want to bear, but I still operate in it, and I still endeavor to do the work that I've been called to do, in spite of the uncomfortableness that it, puts into my life. It's like there's no way of freaking around it, man. And I think that's one of the awesome things about running 100 miles is it gives you a real repetition of that in a controlled environment. It gives you a repetition of exactly what we're talking about here right now, but we're talking about this in terms of things in life that matter, the things that we've been called to do, the work we've been given to do, the purpose that we serve within the body of Christ, within our and that lumps everything, your personal life, your professional life, all of that. 100-mile race, man, it gives you this vacuum that you can enter into, and you bump up against that, oh, this is more than I want to bear, but you just move through it anyways. And people ask all the time, why the crap would you run 100 miles? I just posted a video on YouTube today, how to recover from a 100-mile race. Well, half the comments on there are just joking comments because people don't understand. Why would you do this? It's not, honestly, for me personally, it's not for the love of running. Like, why would you do this? And I think that's what the episode's title. So, I'm interested to hear from both of you guys. Why would you do this? Because it takes a huge investment in terms of your time and even your money to train for this and then to show up and to actually execute it. And it's a big endeavor. And I don't care how, I talked about this the other day, I don't care how mainstream ultra running gets. Running 100 miles will never be any easier. I don't care how mainstream it gets. I don't care how many people have ran 100 miles. It's not any easier today than it was 20 years ago when there was just 20 dudes walking around and they were the only 20 people in the world that had ever ran a 100-mile race. It's freaking hard, man. So why? I mean, Paul, dude, you've been teaching all your life, man. You know, you've got a solid family, a secure career. You know, you understand God's word. You're in a solid place in life. Why the crap would you go do something like this, man?
I think, you know, one of the things I always want to push myself. I don't want to make excuses about getting older. I get annoyed by things about, the reality is I'm not as fast or strong as I used to be. But I still want to be as fast and as strong as I can be. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing overarching. But honestly, it started watching you at the Cocodona. And then Blake signing up for the 100, listening to Blake talk about some of what you went through. I watched a lot of that live or watched the live feeds later after. And just it really, to be honest, and you might not feel this way, I just, watching you do that, I knew it was a new arena for you. And I'm like, why is he doing this? Like, his best race is these last man standing where you can be intentional, you know, patient, present, and deliberate, and you know it's going to pay off. Watching you win those, you know, mid-state miles and that being your arena, and then all of a sudden you're going out west and do it, you know, and the challenge is, honestly, I'm sitting there thinking when you got close to the end, like the fact that you just took quitting off the table and you knew your feet were obliterated and all that kind of stuff, and I got to thinking, well, I had attempted 100 and made a silly decision, wasn't present and deliberate, and hurt myself and didn't wind up finishing it. Did a great 50-miler the next year, and I had pretty much decided, hey, I'll just do 50-milers. I didn't know that. It's a one-day deal. Training, you know, it takes a lot more training, a lot of back-to-back long runs, takes time away from my family. I got a kid running cross country I'm trying to invest in. I can't train for 100.
Yeah.
So after watching the Cocodona, hearing Blake talk about doing one, and then Caleb and I had started running together. So I felt less stress about being away from home, because even though I was away from home, I was running with one of my sons. So I could train again. And Caleb and I, for New Year's, it was 2023. And Caleb had run 6 or 7 miles. 6 miles. His 6 miles.
I started running again in December.
So he started running in December a little bit and ran 6 miles. And I said, well, I'm going to run 23. And I was running 23 miles for 2023. Caleb didn't even understand that's why I was doing that. And
that was not communicated.
Yeah. Well, so I was just thinking, you know, I wasn't in great shape. I had already run that 50-miler, and then I had tapered and pretty much was running every now and then. And but I was just going to run 23 and run and walk and do what I needed to do. So we ran a mile pretty easy, and then walked like for 5/10 to 7
500s.
500s to 700s to recover each mile. And we were about 3 to 4 miles in, and I said, Caleb was talking about doing like 13 of it with me. So I was just going to go out and back the 13, and then I was just going to keep running. And Caleb was like, no, I'll just see how long I can stay. And once he said that, I knew he's doing the whole thing with me.
No food in my bag.
Yeah, no food in his bag.
Didn't even plan on doing that.
I had him covered.
Yeah, early on you don't understand how important that is.
I learned that real quick.
Yeah. I gave him a gel, and he was like, got all spry. But so he ran 23 miles with me that New Year's, and we ran at 12 degrees. We went out to Berry and ran with it with 12 degrees and freezing. My glasses froze over. It was crazy. And his hands must not have got cold because
they didn't. I was running. You move a lot less in duck hunting than you do in running.
But we really did. That really did help me feel better about taking a challenge. And I saw the Daytona 100. Caleb and I both grew up going to Daytona. I didn't have any expectation anybody was going to do it with me. I just felt like I needed to sign up for something. So in March, I signed up. I told John Hogue I was signing up, and he had done 100 with some of his friends the year before, and he said, I'll do it. So we all three signed up the same day, and from March on, that was just what our focus was, and I wound up we we had a boy that died of cancer. His name is Malachi Walker. He was a kid in my school who was a 5th grader. He got cancer when he was a 3rd grader. Eventually came back to school in a wheelchair. Just a great kid. One time he said, you know Michael Jackson? I was like, yes, sir, I know Michael Jackson. He said, you know that song, Beat It? And I was like, yeah. He said, that's what I'm going to do with this cancer. And that was his attitude all the time. Anytime you were around him, he was, even though his body was being emaciated by treatment and all this stuff, he just always had a great attitude. And, he passed away last year. And so when he passed away, I had somebody in my office make me a shirt, a Malachi Strong shirt, and a bandana that said Malachi Strong. I wore that bandana in my pocket. And kind of had that in my mind with him. He was number 8. And number 7 is the number of completion. So always, when I spoke at his funeral, I said, Malachi taught me a new meaning of continuing and going and having grit. And it was that when you think you're done, with 7 being the number of completion, when you think you're done, you've got one more. And it's so funny because we ran this 100-mile race. We ran 101 miles. And so we ran 100 miles plus one more in the race. And so it was a special thing. And basically it was just, motivated by just always, wanting to be stronger.
When I ran that 23 miles with Dad, we, like I said, I left there and, I was planning on running 13. And, I've run 12 in cross-country practice and all that kind of stuff in high school. And so when I was running that, just planning on running 13, I was like, okay, I won't need any food, obviously, because, it's just 13 miles, which now I take food for 13 miles. But back then, I just didn't. If you don't think about it, you don't need it. But, once
until you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyways, so I was good. And then we hit I think it was at mile 12. And I had already decided that I was going to do the whole 23 with Dad. And like I said, I didn't know why we were doing 23. I was just like, why are we not doing a marathon? Because that's an actual, attainable number that somebody has set out to be a number of a run that you do. Yeah. And I was like, but okay, whatever. I'll just do what he does. And so.
He never asked for clarification.
No, I didn't. I asked that after we were done. But anyways, no, actually it was the post. You made a post or whatever, and it said we ran 23 for 2023, and Krista told me about it. And I was like, oh, is that why we did that? But anyways, I was running, and I was like, man, I'm getting to a low point. Like, this is absolutely awful. And we're running freaking 10:30 pace. Like, why does this hurt so bad? And then he gave me a gel, and I ate that gel, and I was like, holy crap. Like, what was in this thing? It felt like one of those, now, like one of those caffeine gels. Like I was
gave
just
him one with caffeine.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know. I was just sprung up with energy. I was like, is this all it takes to run a long ways? You just got to eat during this thing? I can do that. And so I started doing that, and it's been fun ever since.
So why did you decide to commit to 100 miles? Because 23 miles is like way not 100 miles.
Well,
that's a pretty big commitment.
Yeah.
When your distance PR is 23 miles, to shortly after that commit to running 100 miles. I mean, what made you commit to that?
So I had planned, like, after I ran that 23 miles with Dad, once I hit mile, I think it was 17, my legs just became like automatic. Like, it was like, I can do this all day. I can't bend over anymore. Yeah. And I can't, I went to pick up a stick on the trail that was in the way because it was pouring rain and nasty weather, and there was trees blowing everywhere, so we were climbing over trees and stuff. But I was trying to move stuff out of the way for the bikers because they're a bunch of whiny babies on the Silver Comet anyways. But I was, trying to be nice, and I bent over, and I couldn't even reach the stick. I was like, oh, nope, not doing that anymore. And so I was like, I can just run, though. Like, that didn't bother me. The running didn't bother me. And then eventually it became the walking that bothered me. So when we started walking the, 10th of a mile instead of the 500s, I told Dad, I said, you can walk. I'll just run. Because I can keep running, but I can't keep starting and stopping. And so I was like, it's only for 23 miles. I'm just going to keep a really slow run while you're walking. And so I just loved that automatic feeling. And so I was like, okay, well, I mean, that's going to be amplified in 100 mile, right? I mean, you're just going to be automatic for a lot more.
That was the first time you had kind of tapped into that realization.
Exactly. Because before that, when I was in high school, the longest run I had ever done was either 10 or 12 miles. I can't remember, but that was at 6:05 pace. So it's a little different, you don't feel automatic.
Yeah, a
It's
lot
worked the
different.
whole time.
Yeah, you're working the whole time for sure.
But also, it wasn't that distance where you start feeling automatic. Because for me, that happens at like 17 miles, except for during the race. It happened way later. But
Okay. Well, yeah, I want to get into the race and talk about how it went for you guys and what you guys learned from this endeavor and challenges that you had to overcome and highs and lows and all that good stuff. Did you guys use HOIST?
Drank HOIST the whole way.
Did you really?
Yes, sir. I had HOIST on my right side. Had some carbohydrate drink on the left side and water in the Camelback.
Yep.
And then toward the end, I didn't want another gel, so I told them to start putting HOIST in my Camelback, so I'd have a little bit more calories. But I ran that 50-mile. I ran a 12-and-a-half-hour 50-miler on the Georgia Jewel, and I drank HOIST the whole way exclusively, along with having some gels and some real food. And, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's a great product, man. It really is. Did you use it, Caleb?
yes, sir. Yeah, like Dad said, it was just one of my hydration drinks. And, I mean, it tastes good, like y'all always say. It's it obviously hydrates you. You wouldn't be able to run as long as we did if it didn't hydrate you. And, I mean, I used it the whole time during training. That was the main thing that I used to hydrate myself on those long back-to-back runs. I used HOIST, and it worked every single time. It kept my calories up, even if, like Dad said, when your stomach starts getting down, you can just be like, okay, well, at least I know I got some calories in this HOIST.
Yeah, you're getting something, yeah.
I will say one other thing about HOIST is, a lot of times we may not get a chance to say. So I subscribe, and I get, once a month, and get some discounts because I work, as a teacher. But that one time an order messed up. They sent my order to another guy named Paul, and his order to me. And I told him, just send me what I didn't get. Because some of them were duplicated. Like, he got some of the same stuff we got. And I was like, they just sent me a whole other shipment. Mm-hmm. So we wound up having plenty for the race, because I get the powders and then I get a variety of the drinks. So I get a watermelon, some variety packs, and I like the peach mango the most. And just their customer service, all I had to do was email the lady. And she's just Johnny on the spot. She takes care of it. She emails me back. And if they mess something up, they just make it right. And so that's one of the things that, not only is it a great product, like you say all the time, the people are great people.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that, man. I love hearing that because it's been the same way. We've worked with HOIST now for a long time, and it's been the same experience for us. Working with them is super easy because they're good people and they care. And that was the thing that amazed me, too, when I did the Cocodona. Drinking HOIST as my exclusive hydration supplement for 4 days straight, I was like, surely at some point I'm not going to be able, my palate is going to get tired of this. But it didn't. It's the only thing hydration supplement that I've used in my water that I don't get tired of drinking. And I've tried all of them, man. I've tried all of them. And it's just something about the balance between the sweet, but also a little bit of saltiness. Yep. It never gets old for some weird reason. So they nailed it on that. So I'm glad you guys got to put it to the test, and it worked out for you the way it's worked out for me in the past. If you guys run, sweat, work hard out in the heat, you generate, sweat, and you're depleting yourself, get you some dang HOIST. It's going to help you go further, and it does everything that it says it will do, which is hydrate you better than water. It definitely does that. Not to mention, it's made in America, which is a big deal to me. It's hard to manufacture a product in America. I mean, it takes extra effort to do that, and they've made the extra effort to do it. So check them out at drinkhoist.com, guys. It would mean a lot to us if you guys support our partners here at 307 Project. Let's get into the race, man. On the start line, how did that feel? I mean, this is your first time being on a start line of a 100-mile race. Paul, it's your second time, but you had a DNF the last time you attempted this. Yeah. So how were you feeling on the start line? Because I like to talk about this because nobody ever talks about it.
Honestly, I learned a lot from the first one. because it was the jewel, and I had a lot more confidence going into this one because I did one thing. I bulletproofed myself with taking quitting off the table. It was done. There's no way I wasn't finishing this race.
How did you do that? I mean, what's that process look like for you? Because
me,
I feel that, man.
Yeah. For me, it was absolutely setting some bars in my mind in my training that I had to hit. Like I said, I had to get a over 70 mile weekend. I had to get consistent back-to-back long runs, and I knew once I got over the hump with those, then I'm ready. And then it came down to, it doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to finish this race. DNF is not acceptable. And the thing is I think something's important here. There's nothing special about doing a 100-mile race unless it's special to you. I think Blake and I talked about this when I didn't finish the other one. You can't do a 100-mile race for somebody else. You have to do it for you. And that's where I got to. We had conversations ahead of time. We did, every 2 weeks, we did a conference call with John Hogue out in Arizona, Caleb, me, and John Hogue, and we talked about where we were in our training, what we were going to do. Right before the race, when we did that last conference call, we had some straight-up conversations about, number one, what do you need when you get to a low point? Because every one of us is going to experience that. Hopefully we experience it at different times.
Yeah.
Number two, we had a conversation that I basically said, guys, y'all did this for me. I'm assuming I'm right in the understanding that y'all are going to do it my way. Regardless if you are or not, I'm doing it my way. So if you need to go faster, you can leave me and go faster. I'm fine with that. I'm going to do it my pace. If you need to go slower and I'm not going to meet the 24-hour deadline or my goal that I set, if I get to a place where it looks like you're going to hold me back from that, I'm sorry. I love you, but I'm going for this. Mm-hmm. This is my thing. And so I think that mindset ahead of time, and then the days leading up to it, I went on a run in the morning, and I just thought about, things that I've learned from listening to people like you and Blake and other folks. I was like watching Blake do that 100, and had his knee not been hurt, there's no telling what his time would have been. Like a lot of people, he's not saying this. I haven't heard him talk about this on a podcast like, oh, wow, I watched him train. I went on some training runs with him that I couldn't.
Hard, man.
Like, yeah, I know, but he didn't quit.
Yeah.
And so that was something. Quite frankly, it was all the bulletproof in my mind. I feel like ahead of time with there's just no highway option.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish this thing. Part of it was other people. There's so many other people investing in this with me. Caleb, John, my family. At the time, of course, I didn't know Blake and them were coming down there, but that was part of it. But it couldn't be that. It had to be, this is my deal. And even like Malachi and thinking about his life and what it meant, that was a part. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But ultimately, it was my word and my integrity on the line. And I can't do this again. I can't get on a starting line and get into the hard stuff and quit. If something's broken, yes. But if something's hurting, it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. Man, I'm so glad you brought that up. These notes right here that are on this paper, this is actually my notes from a speech that I gave 2 days ago. So this is a speech that I give called Change the Way You Think. And at the very top, number 1, right there, on changing the way you think, this speech says, take quitting off the table.
Yep.
Wow. Huh. How about that? Number 1, it is literally the foundational element. It lays the foundation of proper thinking. As long as you still have some inkling of an idea that if things get harder than you wanted them to be, that you can bow out, as long as you still operate with that little bit of idea in your mind, you will not think properly about anything. So this is the foundational element of setting yourself up to think right. And why is it important to think right? Because a very large percentage of the problems that we have in our lives that we just can't seem to overcome, the challenges that we're faced with that we just can't find a way around, over, through, a lot of those things exist. A high percentage of them exist because we don't think right. That's why I've made this my primary speech, because I've thought about what people are faced with, all these challenges, and whether it's business, spiritual, marriage, whatever aspect of your life, these people are faced with all these challenges, and they get all these bull crap answers. They get all these, people trying to give them these tactics and procedures and things that they can do on a day-to-day basis that's going to help them overcome the. No, it almost always revolves around improper thinking.
Mm-hmm. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is.
Come on.
And that's the thing that I think we taught my teachers, even when they knew we were doing this, and they sent me some of the texts that I got were, don't forget, because I share this with my staff sometimes about my family. One of the things we say in our home is wilders don't whine. And I asked Natalie what one of her takeaways from this race was, and she said, y'all never came in complaining and whining. You told us what you needed. You told us if something was hurting, we said, hey, if we needed to address it. Now, we didn't talk about things hurting that didn't need to be addressed.
Yeah.
So that would be the second thing, obviously. And where do we, power of the spoken word.
Yeah.
What's in your heart? That's the thing. This run was not just something I was doing. It was something in my heart. And so I was able to take quitting off the table. And I think, running it with other people, and I think it's kind of unique. We ran with 3 people. And the Bible talks about a 3-cord strand is not easily broken. Boy, I think my sister mentioned that to me when I was talking to her after the race. I have an older sister, 14 months older than me. And, she runs like half marathons and stuff. And she just does some CrossFit and takes care of herself, and she was just really, engaged. All my family was really engaged in this thing, and that's something she mentioned. I thought, what? That's true. We had all 3 of us, and it was a beautiful thing.
Well, I think with the, taking quitting off the table, a lot of people hear, even that follow 307, they hear Chad say those things, and they say, all right, on this race or on this event, I'm taking quitting off the table. But it's like, no, man, that's the way you live. Like, your life is your life, and you don't differentiate business,
marriage.
You don't differentiate any
children.
Of that stuff.
Yeah, the principle applies to every aspect.
But it's who you are, and then who you are is who you are in the things that you do. And I watched this documentary on Conor McGregor, and people can say what they want about him, but the dude's legit. Like, he's the real deal, And he was saying in that documentary he'd lost a fight, and he was like, look, I was training bad. He said, I said I was going to wake up at this time and train, and I didn't. I said I wasn't going to eat this thing. I ate that thing. I said go to sleep at this time. I went to sleep later. And he was like, all of those things over the course of that training cycle, they were just little minor losses, minor quitting, all this. And he said, I quit. And it's like, well, really, that's who you are. Taking quitting off the table is something you do long in advance of the race you do. So
those long run commitments that you do on Saturday, and I quit playing guitar on Sunday morning so I could run an early long run before church on Sunday morning, and like the commitment that I made to be ready for this race was part of taking quitting off the table.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that.
Yep.
I get that. What about you, Gadwall? You're entering into this, new level of challenge that you've never experienced before. You don't know what it's going to feel like at mile 70, 80. You have no idea what to anticipate.
You don't know what it's going to feel like at mile 30.
Yeah.
We were all getting PRs. Like, he got a PR at mile 31. I got a PR at mile 51. The only way we could get John a PR is to finish in under 23:54.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So how did that feel? I mean, showing up and knowing what was ahead of you?
So, I mean, the longest race I had done before this was a 5K, obviously, because I did that in cross country in high school. But I think leading up to it, so the biggest thing for me was, so by the time we had committed to it, I started working at Toyo. And they work a 2-2-3 schedule. So you work 2 days, you be off 2 days, work 3 days, it just continues, it goes back and forth. So basically 1 week you work Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the next week you only work Wednesday, Thursday. And so with that schedule, I was like, okay, all these training plans everybody's coming up with or any suggestions anybody has are completely irrelevant. And so I was like, I'm going to have to make this crap up on my own and do what I know to do and just stay, like you always talk about, stay patient with the process that I know. I don't know exactly what the process is going to look like. I just know that if I push too fast, I'll get shin splints because I've had 2 stress fractures from high school. I knew that if I trained too many miles that I'd get shin splints and possibly, I didn't want to do anything that would take me out of the race, but I knew I couldn't, just slack around, obviously. And so I just basically made up my own training plan. So, like, when I would work the long week and I had Wednesday, Thursday off, I just had to run both of those days. And so, but also I was standing up on my feet for 12 hours during that week that I was working, and so, you can't discount that time on your feet on the concrete because it's, it's rough on the joints.
For sure.
But anyways, I would train Wednesday, Thursday, and I had to take, not running off the table. Now, there were some times that, obviously, I put it back on the table of not running. But anyways, I just, based on the baby, it wasn't because of any reason that I wanted to do it, but I had just had a baby. So when I was training for it, like I said, I was just kind of in a gray area of like, how am I going to train to run 100 miles? And it was, okay, it got to a point where I was just, okay, how many miles can I put on my legs and how much time on my feet can I get in a week and still feel okay? And so for me, it was very untraditional, I guess. But then again, ultra running is very untraditional, and the way people train, everybody trains different.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing I liked about it was I could just make it up, and then as we finish, turns out, I can train effectively just making the crap up in my mind. And so that was the biggest win for me, to be honest, was my training. I never got injured. I never had shin splints, knee pain. The only time I ever had knee pain was when I would change shoes. Like if so I started out running one kind of shoes, then I tried another pair, and I liked them pretty good, but the bottoms wore out. So then I went to the Speedlands, and those bottoms never wore out, and they felt fantastic. So I stuck with those. But other than that, that's the only pain I ever had during my training. So the biggest win for me was showing up healthy. And because, like I said, I made it up as I went. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not completely new to running. I know what it takes to run, and enjoy running in the fact that you can bring whatever pain upon yourself that you want to, just like duck hunting. But anyways, It's like when I showed up on that start line, to be honest with you, I was probably the complete opposite of what Dad was talking about, because he was talking about all these people, and it was his thing. Like he said, me and John were doing it with Dad, for Dad. And we were doing it at his pace, and we had said that on the video chat before. Like, we were planning on, even if I felt better, I wasn't going to run faster. I was just going to stay with him. Because I told him, I said, kind of like Blake talked about with his race, if you're out there longer, you just gain more. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that if you can run it faster, I'd run it faster. But in this situation, I wasn't going to, because I was doing it with Dad, and I knew that I could still get more out of it if I just stayed with Dad, period. And so going to it, for me, it was just like, I'm just going and running with Dad and John. Like, it was very underwhelming. I did not have anything built up in my mind. I wasn't stressed. It was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to go run. And I didn't think about the distance. I knew it was 100 miles. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not an idiot. But I was like, very underwhelmed, I guess, compared to how I've been to every other thing I've ever done. But I told this to John before Dad joined in on the last call that we did the week before. I've never done something where the training was easier than the event. And that's unique to ultra running.
Yes.
Because anytime you do, like, I've played baseball, basketball, soccer, ran cross country, track, done a lot of sports. The practice is always harder because you're supposed to be preparing for the event.
Yeah.
In ultra running, you cannot, without hurting yourself, make the practice harder than the actual event.
You have to be an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have to just run.
That's a good point, man.
You just have to run the 100-mile race, I guess for nothing if you did the training race. If you said, I'm going to run 100 miles to train for 100 miles, I guess you're just running a pointless race. But also your legs probably wouldn't be able to take running. You wouldn't be able to peak at the same time for sure. But I was super excited. I told John about the fact that I had the opportunity to push myself harder in an event than I ever did in training, and I'd like to see how that turns out. And so that's when going on to the start line, I was excited about that part, but everything else, I was just super underwhelmed because I was like, I'm just going out for a run. Just another day. So,
were you confident that you were going to finish, or was there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've never even thought about that as an aspect of a unique aspect of ultra running. That point that you just made about how you can't replicate the difficulty of the race in training because, like you said, you'll break yourself. Yeah, you could replicate it, but the actual race that you're running, when you're talking about running 100 miles or more, it's unhealthy. It's not healthy for you. It does nothing but tear you down in a big way. So you're not going to do that in training. So, yeah, you get to face up to something on race day, especially when it's your first 100-miler that you've never felt or experienced before, and there's no way to replicate it other than actually doing the real thing on the day that it actually counts.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a pretty unique aspect. So you guys start this race. At what point did it get hard for you, Paul? At what point was it like, and you know what I mean by hard?
Yeah.
I mean, like, okay, this ain't really fun no more.
Yeah. Well, it started off, the biggest fear or anxiety I had early on was whether or not we're going to have enough porta-johns to take care of Caleb because he pees all the time. And so, I
do too.
We articulated all of that, and
that was the only thing I was concerned about with this race. I told Dad, I said, I can maintain the pace we got to maintain. I can eat all day long, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold my urine in long enough to make it all the way.
Yeah, I'll teach you a little trick one day, Caleb. You can walk and pee at the same time out of the bottom of your shorts.
Well, when you're walking down the sidewalk on A1A in Daytona, you might not be having that.
And they specifically tell you in the manual that you cannot do that in public.
Oh, well, dang.
Yeah,
okay.
so you get disqualified.
It's in the rule book.
Yeah, so we were like, we got to. So
What the
John
heck?
was like the master at finding porta-johns from construction sites. So we were so blessed with that. But anyway, the first hard part, I think because it was so easy early, we pushed the pace a little bit. And I don't think we pushed the pace to an unhealthy level. John did a tremendous job pacing us. We had the plan of going 7 and 3, 7-minute run, 3-minute walk. During the 3-minute walk, we're going to keep up with nutrition and make sure we're drinking. And I think the problem was on those 3-minute walks, I took too much nutrition early. We were running probably 10:30 to 10:10 pace.
10:30 pace, yeah.
So we were consistently at 10:30 pace. And it felt actually really good. There was nothing like I wasn't straining myself to do that. All of my training, I ran about that pace anyway. And so we were pretty good going into about I would say like the first aid station, Blake and them came down. I didn't know where they were coming. John knew they were coming.
Well, that's the second aid station.
Well, we didn't stop at the first aid station.
Yeah, we did, 16.
Well, that's
They
what I
came
mean.
at
That's
26.
I thought we saw y'all at 16.
No.
Okay. So, the first aid station was a breeze. Everything went quick. And then we got to the aid station where Blake and them were. That's where I changed shoes and that van got stuck. And so I had to go get my shoes, and there's a van right behind our truck trying to get out, and I'm like having to get around them. But I changed shoes because I had plantar fasciitis in my heel, and it gets aggravated. And the shoes I was wearing was really good on the forefoot, but they weren't good on my heel. So I went with a different shoe, and it was immediately a win there. So that was the only early stuff, and there was no worry. That was, it didn't matter if that hurt the whole way. I was going to be fine. But the real problem started about mile 33. We started going over this bridge.
It's early.
We started going over the bridge, and like I said, I ate too much early. And I know we joke about the meat sticks, and the Coke didn't happen until after I got sick, by the way. The Coke was to settle my stomach from getting sick.
I assume somebody has already listened
I've
to
already listened to that
podcast. Okay.
Of course Paul's going to puke, but the reality was I was afraid that if I introduced something totally strange later, like I did practice eating something different. The meat stick was the only salty variation I could think of because I knew I was going to get sick of all that sweet stuff, the sweet Humagels and all. So, but the problem was, I think, because, like I said before, those 3 minutes, they come so often, you have a tendency to eat too much, or you have a tendency to neglect it and not eat. Like on training runs, Caleb would have to remind me to eat. And so I feel like it started getting hot. We were running a pretty good pace. So I come into that aid station, and it's a great spot. I love how that aid station was set up, especially after I puked, because there was plenty of grass to absorb it. But I get in the aid station, and we had talked about not sitting down until we absolutely had to. And I was expecting to be going 7 and 3 for at least 50 miles. We get right before that bridge, so it was probably a couple of miles out from the aid station. I had to tell John I couldn't run. I needed to ease off a little bit. So we went up walking up the bridge, which is the only elevation in Florida is the bridges, right? And that's something I was kind of proud of, hey, we can run these easy because where we live, But we had to kind of back off on that. And I felt that was something that was really unique about this race. For a moment, I felt embarrassed and it was a challenge on my manhood. These guys are fine and I'm not. But I think there was a deliberate thing in me that, this, you're not racing 50 miles. You're not racing 30 miles. You're racing 100. You got to get right. Got to the aid station, sat down in a chair, and got nauseous. And so then I just eliminated everything that was in my stomach. Almost got my daughter.
Did that hit you when you sat down?
Once I sat down, that's where it hit
I wonder
me.
why.
I think, and that's why I told Caleb later, hindsight's 20/20. Every time we sat down, that's what the second time I got sick was the same thing. It was when I sat down, but I would get nauseated. But I think it was, like I say, I had too many calories. Once I got that done and we started running the next leg, we had to back off and change our plan a little bit to, was it 6 and 4 we went to?
Mm-hmm. And then we dropped the pace to 11.
We ran the pace we were supposed to. I told Blake said,
actually, no, we went to 11:30 because what happened was once we came out of 26, we slowed down to 11 because it started getting hot. Like when we went from 26 to 35, I think.
Yeah, it was hot.
Yeah, it got up to 80 degrees. And, it's freaking cold down here.
Yeah,
so we're like, okay.
No cloud cover.
No, you're running on the road
exposed
the whole time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, dude, it is hot. Like, this is not what I was expecting. I had jackets packed, gloves.
Yeah.
A toboggan.
I had a heater for Amy and them at the aid stations.
Yeah, that was not at all
not
what we
needed.
expected. But, just part of it.
So when you started blowing chunks, did that rattle you at all?
I got on my hands and knees, and Blake got a good picture of that, and we joked about that. But in my mind started going crazy. And quitting started coming. Not then, but you got to at least get 60 or 70. Oh, and I got so mad at myself. And I fixed it. I just fixed it right away. And
what did you do? What do you mean by that?
I just remembered why I was there and what I said I was going to do. I got all these people here supporting me. This is who I'm supposed to be. Like Blake said before, when you say you're going to take quitting off the table, you don't take quitting off the table because you do something. It's who you are. And I'm like, this can't be who I am. I can allow it to be. I can be a sissy if I want to, but that's not what these kids came here to support me. Man, my wife and my kids and Blake and them, every time I saw them, Amy's crewed me at every race I've ever, and man, just she and Natalie have crewed me at a lot of them, and then she's crewed me at all of them, and she's the best. She's never gonna fail me. I know that, and so having her there is just so like I'm not gonna not give my very best for those people, and I was embarrassed that I threw up, but I wasn't going to let that be the story. And so it took me a minute. We left there and we had to keep running through all these people. And it was kind of a blessing in the skies because we really couldn't get back onto our regular process until we got to a bridge. And then that bridge, we got over it and we could start running again. And once we started running again, I felt good. I got through that. So that 35 miles got everything settled. I was really worried about whether or not I could get my stomach, get calories enough.
Yeah.
But I had overdone it so much, I think my body had absorbed plenty. I was probably fine. And that's the thing. You can panic emotionally, like you said before. It's the same thing. As a man, if you think right, I just had to settle my thinking down, not think too far ahead, and just, hey, all you got to do is make it the next aid station. You know, Amy's got grapes. She's got good, healthy food. That'll be my adjustment. We'll just make sure that if I need something solid there, and if I need to sit down and eat more at an aid station, then I'll do that. Because we had run 10:30 pace consistently for a long time, we were well ahead of the game. I was still in great shape. Ultimately, my goal was to run it in under 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first challenge for me. And honestly, there was never a point after that at which there was any doubt. There was a little bit of doubt as to whether or not we're going to get it done fast enough, but never any doubt about finishing after that.
You puked again, though, didn't you?
92.
92?
It felt great.
What the crap,
I
Paul?
was on the way back from the toilet, wasn't
That's right. It's coming out of everybody.
He stopped mid-lot.
Good.
But I was like,
night.
that's 8 miles. Like, it's so weird. Like, when you think about this, when we got to 73 miles, you would think, you can think one of two ways. I was thinking, dang, all we got left is a marathon. Most people would be thinking, oh, dear God, I've still got a marathon.
Yeah.
You know, I was honestly, like, when we got to 92, I'm like, I could do this blindfolded. I could crawl 8 miles.
Yeah.
Like, there was no doubt, you know. And like, I went to the bathroom and came right to the middle of the parking lot and got on my hands and knees and just, bleh, and it was chocolate. It was the only caffeine gel I had all night. And, you know, it was, by this time, it's probably like 3 o'clock in the morning or something. And grapes. Like, I can see, like, the texture of, you know, so it's that fibrous stuff just coming out. Mm-hmm. And I had already told them, it was about 3 or 4 aid stations before that I had started taking HOIST in my water. Like, everything was HOIST, and then the one little BPN supplement of carbohydrates. So I knew I had enough nutrients that even if I got dizzy but I never got dizzy. I never got to that place where your calories get low enough that you start getting a little bit lightheaded and stuff. Yeah.
So at this race, you can't pee on the sidewalk, but you can puke on the sidewalk.
That's right.
I don't understand that. It's both are bodily fluids, so
Yeah.
But
you're not exposing anything you shouldn't expose, you know. But
well,
your plan is,
you can literally just pee out of the bottom of your shorts. Yeah. You don't have to expose yourself.
You could probably get away with that.
Shield yourself and just have the streams the only thing they would see. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So
smells really.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, though, there was a like somebody was doing construction at least every mile.
Praise God for hurricanes.
Every mile there was construction.
Dang.
And so, like, if you had to pee, you just had to wait a few minutes. Like, it was like 1 or 2 minutes.
I never got to a place where I had to hold it very long.
John did. That was only at the end, though. But that was because we had gotten to the city of Daytona, and there's a little less construction where all the downtown stuff is. Yeah.
At night, it wasn't a big deal.
No, you do whatever you want to at night.
Yeah, you could go in the bushes at night,
Yeah,
turn your headlamp off and the flashing lights.
Join all the drunk people at 2 a.m. peeing on the sides.
Yeah, that ticked me off. We ran by this bar, and there was this lady. They had come by us on a motorcycle, and Caleb, we just had the most awesome moment. And this motorcycle comes by, and this drunk lady goes, run. Isn't this a running race or something like that? And I was like, mind your own business. I don't know if she heard me or if I said it loud enough for her to hear me, but I was so mad.
Well, what about you, Caleb? I mean, you're just because these long runs, man. You know, so much of it is just process. It's just process miles, is what I call it. It takes so long for it to get difficult. Oh, that's one of the things I love about it. You have to endure this long process and the whole time you're thinking, well, this is easy. I'm moving slow. Like, when is this going to get hard? When is it going to get hard? I mean, we see it at the ROP course all the time. People don't understand that. They don't understand the concept of waiting and that it's coming. Don't worry. So when was that moment for you? I'm interested because I heard there was a time that you kind of did you fall back or something like that? So what was that moment for you where you were experiencing what you wanted to experience in terms of difficulty?
So there was one point at the beginning of the run, and this wasn't like, a big deal. It was just a little bit of pain. But for some reason, the top of my ankle, where it connects to your foot, where your shin connects to your foot, that tendon was just wore slap out. And so I made jokes with Chili and Blake. I was like, Dad and John were making fun of me, and everybody was making fun of me about how nice it is to be young. But I got warmed up by mile 35. So I felt great at mile 35, which was further than I've ever run before because the longest I had been in my training was 30 miles. But that was when I finally loosened up, was around like mile 32 or so. And so at 35, that tendon went numb. And so I could feel my foot like kind of flopping, but I mean, that was no big deal.
You could hear him. Like he would start, pow, pow. I'm like,
foot just slapping the ground.
Oh, yeah. But it felt great because it was numb, so I didn't care. And but it didn't get hard until, let's see, that was when Blake ran with us. It was from 60 to 73, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And so at about 62 was when John's wife met us, July.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so anyways, right before that, my knee, the whole front of it was just it was just crazy how hard the pain was. And I was trying to run, and I would just get running, and then I'd stop. I'd get running, then I'd stop. I'd get running, then I'd stop. And so finally, in that moment, we just had to walk for a little bit, and I just walked it out, and then would start running slow, and then speed it up more and more and more and more. So I'd start running, and when I started running again, I was running like 15-minute pace, so like real slow. But then it just picked up and picked up and picked up. And then John's wife met us with a knee brace, and I absolutely hate the idea of wearing a knee brace.
Oh,
but
you didn't want to put that knee brace
I didn't want to put that sucker on. I was like, John was like, yeah, you can use this. And I said, no, I'm good. And then
those knee braces are kind of silly.
Well, every bit of like 2 minutes later, I was like, God, I'm just being, prideful and being an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I need it. So I asked him, I was like, hey, what is it like? And he said it's just a compression sleeve, basically, with a piece of plastic on the front that holds your meniscus in place. And so anyways, I was like, okay, I can wear a compression sleeve on my knee. That's probably, usually compression for some reason takes, I don't know all the science behind it, but takes away some of the pain, whether it be placebo effect or whatever it is. Yeah. I don't care. It worked. And so anyways, I felt a lot better after I put that on, and I was good to go again. Then at when we left the mile 73 aid station, it got absolutely unbearable on the back of my calf. So it's the tendon that runs from your hamstring, then to your knee, and then off the back of your knee to your calf.
Yep.
It was hurting like crazy. And I mean, I could not run. I would try, and it would just lock up every time. And so it just would not let up. It was flexed the entire time. And so I couldn't bend it, and so I couldn't run. But I could walk because you can walk straight-legged.
Did it get swollen and red and hot? Or
so I didn't pay attention to it at the time, but I'm sure it did. At the end of the race, it dang sure was.
I've had that flare up on me before too, man. It's super painful.
Oh yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna keep trying and keep pushing and trying to push through. And so I would run for a couple of seconds and then stop. Run for a couple of seconds, stop. Like it was not long at all. It was more than a couple seconds. It was probably like 30 seconds I'd run and then have to ease up and walk again. But eventually got to the point where John said, we're going to have a hard conversation about whether you want to finish all together or whether you want to finish in under 24 hours. And I said, and I had already come to that decision and thought in my mind as well. I was about
He'd
to
already told us to leave him.
Yeah. And so I said, y'all leave me. Like, I'm not worried about it. Y'all leave me. Mm-hmm. And I said, they were like, okay, well, what's your plan? And I said, I'll just get Krista to come get me. And part of me was thinking that, but a lot more of me was thinking, I just need to get them out of here so I can do what I need to do. And then we'll reevaluate here in a few minutes. And so, because I was not going to hurt my knee so bad that I couldn't walk within, a certain amount of time, because I got to be back at work. And doing electrical work is not easy on the knees.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been over putting in receptacles on your knees the entire day. Like, there's several times where you're just bent over or on a ladder and you have to, straighten out your knees when you're on the tall extension ladders, stuff like that. So I knew it'd be rough on it. But I was like, okay, I need to just, chill out for a second. And so I walked for a good 45 seconds. And then I was sitting there thinking, and I know it was God in my head. He said, just, what to do, which is you're sitting here trying to push and then let off, push and let off, push and let off. Like, just ease into it. Be patient with how you're loosening up. Like, your muscle's not going to just, in the snap of a finger, just loosened.
Yeah, especially when you keep trying to push it at the soonest possible interval.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was like, so when they left, I was like, okay, I'm going to be able to, after I, thought through all that, I was like, I'm going to be able to work it at my own pace. And so I started, once again, running at 15-minute pace. And I'd run for 2 minutes, and then I'd walk for 30 seconds. And then same thing. I did that probably 3 times. And the interval they were running at the time was 3 and 2. And so I couldn't maintain that. That's why they left. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm starting to feel a little better. So I eased up, and I was, I think I walked for a little bit longer, a minute. Then I started running for 5 minutes. So I'd run for 5 and walk for 1. Because I put it in my head, I was like, I got to catch them before the next aid station, because otherwise Blake and all them are going to leave me. And they wouldn't have done that. That was just me thinking during a race, not all the way there. But I'm glad that I wasn't able to do that. I'm glad that I thought those thoughts, because it pushed me to do what I needed to do. Mm-hmm. And so I caught Dad and them before they even got to the next aid station with all that crap. And
I want to say it was 7 miles that he did whatever he had to do to work through that, and then caught us. And when he caught us, that was the best. That was the highest moment of the race.
Yeah, it was really hard. The being patient and deliberate part really set in during that, because what happened was, like I said, I was running 5 and walking 1, which is way harder than any of the interval we did the entire time. And so when Dad and them got within earshot, and then my walk would hit. And so I'd get 20 or 30 yards from them, and then it'd be time to walk. And I'd be like, oh, God. So then I did it again and again. It happened 3 times where I was 20 yards from them, and I couldn't catch up because I was running 13-minute pace, and they were running 12:30.
And we weren't looking for him.
Mm-mm.
Not based on the conversation we had when he dropped. I was thinking he's going to walk or run the rest of it easy enough that he's going to finish in, 27 hours, or he's not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so we weren't looking back.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I get that. It was hard. It was hard to not deviate from what you had decided to do that was ultimately working, because you were getting close, right? Mm-hmm. So it was hard not to just kind of push through and deviate from what you had been doing in order to simply catch up with them and get back on their pace.
Oh yeah, and it was I was glad that all happened, because the rest of the race I didn't have to be very there mentally. I didn't have to be very present mentally, because John was there pacing us. Yeah. And I was just doing my thing, just running. That's all I had to do was run for whatever interval we were doing and walk for whatever interval that was. It was easy. And so, and overall, other than that little part, it was easy. because all you had to do was run. I mean, it's, like Chili talks about, it's very simple. You either do it or you don't. And so it was very simple for me. All I had to do was keep running, and all I had to do was finish in under 24 hours. Now, that's not necessarily easy in the scheme of things, but it was easy to think about mentally and easy to grasp.
Yep.
And so it was easy to execute because I could grasp it.
Yep. Yeah, I totally get that struggle you were feeling. You talked about that tension of, getting close, falling behind, getting close, but I really commend you for sticking to what you were doing instead of pushing through. That was something I really struggled with during the Cocodona race that I did. We would start, I remember many times starting up a big climb or something, and there'd be a couple other runners in sight, and I would immediately want to hammer that climb just to pass them. And Chili would tell me over and over again, he's like, no, man, just keep doing what you're doing. You'll pass them. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's hard to do, though, especially when you get close. They're within 100 yards, or you just want to, let's just speed up a little bit and just go ahead and get around them. Mm-hmm. But it's like, no, you've caught up to them because what you're doing is working.
Oh, yeah. But
you just got to give it a little more time to pass them in a more sustainable way, So every time I run a long race like this, I don't know if this is the same for you guys, but every time I run a long race, there's like one lesson that comes out of it that kind of, a lot of times there's a lot of different lessons, but for me, almost every time there's one overarching lesson. And I kind of shared that on the last week's podcast for me about the idea, this past race that I ran, the same weekend you guys were running, the major lesson for me was what you're doing right now is writing your story. What you're doing right now is affecting your future and the outcome that you set out to achieve. So it's interesting. It's interesting. That lesson's never came out for me in any other race, and I've ran I don't know how many 100-milers now. But every time I learned something new. So was there kind of, for you, Paul, was there something that you took from this? Has that came to the surface yet?
Absolutely. I want to go back because the difficulty Caleb experienced was difficult on all of us.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
That was the low point for all of us. John's only struggles were a little bit of distress in his gut and then having to run slow. Like, it was harder for John to run slow. Like, he probably could have run that whole race at 10:30. Like, he could have done the 7 and 3 at 10:30 and 16 more easily than he could do what he was doing to pace and keep me healthy.
Yeah, we see that on the ROP course all the time.
Yeah. So John, that was his great sacrifice. And, man, I think Caleb and I both would say, he took all the stress of pacing off of us and made us be able to just focus on what we needed to do.
But y'all been together for a long time, and then all of a sudden you lose a team member.
Yeah. And that was so hard. Like I said, we set the stage for that ahead of time. We knew what we were going to do. Caleb had already told us to leave him. And John was like, no, man, we still got some gap here. Because we had run her fast enough early on, and this was 73 miles in. We still were well ahead of the game. And so we tried to just let Caleb kind of set the pace. And like Caleb said, that one part of his leg, you could tell he'd run and then just have to step off into the grass. I mean, it was not just, I can't run. It was excruciating for him. And I know that. And so my takeaway, I want to tell a story Caleb and I went through, and this is just my perspective. Caleb and I didn't even talk about him dropping and what that meant for us and how we felt about it until Tuesday after the race. And we still haven't processed all of it together. But Caleb had Crohn's, was diagnosed with Crohn's when he turned 15. That summer, he got his wisdom teeth cut out, and he kept having stomach issues. Every 8 to 10 days, he'd start cyclically vomiting and not be able to get anything out. And with Crohn's, they usually say you have diarrhea and things like that. And he never had that. So the diagnosis kept coming back, and we got into, they did an endoscopy and gave us all these solutions with steroids and all this bull crap. And it got so frustrating. He went from 120 something pounds, strong muscles, playing baseball, lifting, doing what we do in my basement, to walking by me looking like an Ethiopian that we need to feed. 90 pounds?
88. Yeah.
88 pounds.
Good night.
They finally got him into the emergency room, found out, did a colonoscopy, and found that the end of his intestines, that it was hardened and there was a hole that big for his waste to go out. And that's why every 8 or 10 days, all that waste would get backed up and it had to come out the other way.
Good gosh,
and his stomach would be cramping. So 2 things about that. Blake asked me during the run, or said something during the run, and said, that's a tough kid. What'd you say? That's a tough kid? He said, that Caleb's a tough kid, ain't he? I said, dude, he's been through harder. Like, this wasn't hard.
Yeah.
What was hard was sitting in a hospital for 9 days, watching them tell him, hey, this is going to get better, but not really sure. And not knowing what's going on and what's causing this. And as a father, feeling helpless, praying, doing everything you know to do. For a kid who's been like, my other kids look up to him. Like, if I wasn't around, it was his voice they listened to. That's the kind of dude this is. And to watch him suffer like that and go through that, I was angry. I was frustrated. Now, God, let me make something clear. God don't cause people to get sick. The devil came to kill, steal, and destroy. Jesus came that we may have life and have that more abundantly. But in this world, you'll have trouble, and we had trouble. Trouble came. We spent 9 days in the hospital the first time, and then the second time, they gave me some Humira, try to calm it down so that they could take out less of the intestines. We went back to the hospital for 8 days. Every single day, my wife drove from Rockmart to Choa to bring us stuff, to be there with him. The kids were without him. And all of that suffering, we didn't choose. He didn't have a choice. And I could tell story after story of his attitude and the victory. And he didn't act like other kids did. They'd come in and bring counselors because they worried about mental health and all that bull crap. He had mental health. He just wanted them to figure something out, right? And so to watch him endure that, 100-mile race, I wasn't worried about him finishing a 100-mile race. But at the point at which he decided to drop, my whole thing was, dude, it ain't worth it if you're going to hurt yourself where you can't work and feed your family and that kind of stuff. That's irresponsible and stupid, to be honest with you. Like people who act like, well, you're so tough because you didn't quit, when if you'd have quit, you wouldn't have had to quit working. I'm sorry, you're an idiot if you do stuff like that, and you're irresponsible with your family because of that. So that's the conversation we had. I had to be very careful. I didn't say much because I didn't want to negatively feed the quit if it wasn't something he needed to do.
Yeah.
But if it was something, I wanted him to have the freedom to choose and work through. And when I talked to him on Tuesday, and he talked about the process he went through to catch back up, so we go running, the highest point of the race for me was we started walking. And as soon as we started walking on one of those about 7 miles after we dropped him, he comes running up. And John goes, there he is. And he said, not today, or something like that. And I think I punched him on the shoulder and I said, you're a beast, man. And that's all we said. Isn't that about right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was just.
Which is wild that you came back from that just by.
It is.
By
it's
just
incredible.
Troubleshooting your pace, and it's really wild.
That
doesn't usually happen.
He sent me a text on the way down, talk about bulletproofing the mind and taking quitting off the table. I just told him I was proud of him and, all this kind of stuff as a man and as a father, not just that he's doing this with me, but as a man, as a father, I'm proud of him. And he sent me a text back basically saying, I'm a Wilder, it's what we do. And I'm just going to get a chance to prove it. How prophetic was that? So the first situation, he didn't have a choice. He runs 100 miles. How many times did you puke?
0. I had 0 stomach distress, and I'm the only one with the disease.
He's the one with supposedly this Crohn's disease, and he runs 100 miles with no stomach distress. But he has this other challenge. And here's the thing. We went through this challenge as a family. All my family was there, including my 307 family. And we got to choose it. We got to choose to do something hard. So that's my number one takeaway, was how much all my family loves me and my friends love me, and that we can get through anything together. And we got to choose that. And the second thing was, if we gave the same energy that we give to physical demanding things like 100-miler, if we gave that same energy and that same simplicity of doing what you need to do. See, we did what we needed to do to train. We did what we needed to do to get our nutrition dialed in, for the most part. We do what we need to do to buy HOIST so that we can stay hydrated. We do all those things we need to do physically to prepare to finish the race. What's that going to look like for me to have the same level of commitment and obedience spiritually?
Mm-hmm.
If we talk about being, I always say we are a spirit. We have a soul, our mind, will, and emotions, and we live in a body. Spirit-led, soul-fed, body-dead, best life ahead. Best is becoming yourself so you can benefit others, executing around what your mission is, strategically stewarding the gifts and talents God gave you, and being trustworthy and dependable. The reason I didn't want to quit that race is because I want to be faithful. Faithful people finish. Faithful people take their talents that God gives them and make more with it, not less. Faithful people finish what they start, and they're trustworthy. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. Caleb said he was going to start the race and do it with me, and he did, and he finished it with me. And so my biggest takeaway, I guess, was it really didn't turn out to be for me as hard as I thought it would be. If I'd have run a little faster, puked a little less, it probably would have been harder. But the reality is, it challenged me with, if you're man enough to do a 100-mile race and it turns out that you could execute and be successful at that, why aren't you executing at that level in your spiritual life? How do you do your spiritual life at the same level of diligence you prepared in that race? So that's kind of my big takeaway.
Yeah, and that's a big takeaway, but it's also a question. I mean, the way you framed it. So, I mean, why is that? Like, why is that you and me and so many people out there, we can do all these things, just like you just said, to be able to accomplish, this physical goal that we've set. But why is it we can't apply the same principles to our spiritual life, or why? Not that we can't. Why don't we?
Yeah,
I think a big part of that is that in our physical fitness, we can see how it works. We can see if I do these things, I see how that translates, and I know at least likely where that will lead me. And you have a lot more control over it versus following Jesus. You have control over your actions, but you don't know like the results it's going to yield. You don't know where it's going to lead you. You don't have the end goal in mind. And so I think that
you're not the boss.
Exactly. And I think that is why a lot of people don't and won't do or put the effort into a spiritual walk as they do a physical fitness challenge.
Well, I think the key that God, I feel like even this morning I told Caleb on the way over here, the scripture that, John the Baptist says when he's called to prepare the way of the king, right? And then Jesus is there and his disciples are like, no, what are we going to do? He said, I must decrease. Yeah. That he may increase. And so the spirit-led, soul-fed, body-dead, it doesn't mean my body is dead. It means my flesh is crucified. Yeah. I'm crucified with Christ. I'm putting off the old man and putting on the new. And it's you can't do that you can't do it on your own. You have to have the Holy Spirit helping you do that. And you have to submit, but you still have to be a doer, right? You still have to just do some things. So it's a brew of obedience mixed with just giftedness that God gives, the grace of God. We're saying by grace through faith, and that grace is a gift. Mm-hmm. And so all of those things confuse us. I think we wind up confusing the issue. And that's at mile 35 when I'm on my hands and knees. The thoughts that were trying to come in and distract me were thoughts of, this is embarrassing. You're on your hands and knees in front of your kids. Blake's taking pictures of you. Chad's making fun of you on a podcast. So all of this stuff, it's all me-centered. But when I'm goal-centered, then it simplifies.
Yeah.
And when I was able to simplify it doesn't matter how I feel right now, because I've got to find a way, because quitting's already off the table. And in life, in a spiritual walk, and not just spirit, like for spiritual walk, to me, it's being, right now, my spiritual walk is a natural walk on this earth as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather, as a friend, as a church leader, as a principal, everything that I do, I'm supposed to do it heartily as unto the Lord. But how much time do I waste on things? Like, I got up early enough to go run and get those runs in where I could still have time to do the things I need to do for my family. Do I do the same thing about the core fundamental things that you have to do to have a relationship with God? Do I make enough time to enjoy reading His Word? Do I make enough time to enjoy worshiping and praising His name and honoring Him with my lips? Do I make enough time to submit to Him in prayer and to pray prayers and supplications, but also just to pray the will of God? And so really that's kind of where I am now, is, all right, what's this going to look like for you? And just like I thought about that other, I believe the key is to have faith that if God wants you to do something, He'll show you. And if you just do it, He'll show you some more. And then you just do that, and He'll show you some more. And that was the beautiful thing of watching Caleb execute around all of this. I thought this race was going to be about me. They were running this race for me and all that kind of stuff. But the most beautiful thing that came out of this race was watching my 24-year-old son execute. And he told me stories about how the scriptures that Krista sent. Watching my baby just crew him during this race and see them invest in one another, and see what that poured into Timothy, so that Timothy's motivated. I did a bike ride with him today, and he went and ran 12 miles at Berry, and he's an excellent runner already, but he ran part of the race with us. And just the engagement of my whole family, that is not just physical. This 100-miler was not just a physical event. It was a soulish event. I had to overcome with my mind, will, and emotions. And it was a spiritual event because we chose, John, Caleb, and I chose to honor God at every moment of what we were doing in this race. So that's, I think sometimes we over-spiritualize things that are natural, and then sometimes we under-spiritualize things that are supernatural. Sometimes just working hard and doing what you're supposed to do is supernatural, because too many people aren't naturally executing around that. And when you do, you're doing something that's a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. Yeah, to me, that's a healthy perspective shift when you can take that idea of what you spent the time on doing to prepare and to execute this, and then turning that around, flipping it around, and asking yourself, well, where am I not doing or applying these same principles and this same amount of effort and this same amount of time to what is really important, my spiritual life? And yeah, when I ask myself what's the answer to that for me, the longer I am being led by Christ, I also realize that Jesus is very subtle, and for the most part, there are moments that are, you experience real highs, if you want to call it, but it's a long walk. Yeah. It's a lifelong walk, and the majority of it is very, very subtle. And I think that even goes back to what you just said about how a lot of things that are supernatural, we don't recognize them as that. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I neglect things that I don't apply the same efforts a lot of times that I would apply to finish a 250-mile race. I don't apply the same effort into walking or serving Christ well, right? Bean told me something on our race that kind of stuck with me along these same lines. He said, he was talking about mine and Brooke's relationship, and he said, nurture your wife's faith. Like, really spend time with her, nurturing her faith. And I was thinking, man, I don't do that. And that's one of those things where I'm not applying the same effort that I would apply to accomplish this physical endeavor. I'm not applying the same effort to something that I should be doing as the spiritual leader of my home. Why the crap ain't I doing that, man?
And that's going to get hard. And when it gets hard, do you have the same taking foot off the table?
Do I have the same attitude about it?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, nurture your wife's faith, like spend the time doing that. And he's like, if the Lord takes her before you, you'll be really, really glad that you spent the time doing that. So that's something I've been trying to be. I have been being more diligent about just after that word from him out there. But there's many, many different examples that you could apply that to, and I think it's a good question for everyone to ask themselves right now.
I think too, we look at like why don't I go this hard and say the spiritual side of things, but we're likening the effort we put into a race that, even if you train for a year for it, like that's a pretty long time to train for a race, but that's 1 year versus 70, 60, 50, however long you live and serve Christ.
Yeah, it's a much longer race.
So I guess you have to rely on Christ more, but like you can't go you almost can't push as hard as you push on that 1 year stretch in a physical challenge and put that same maybe someone would disagree, but it's like you have to back off the pace a little bit because you're going to be doing this the rest of your life. You got to build these habits in slowly. Take one little bite, like Chad said, is very subtle, and that's because it's slow, sustained growth. It's something that you can take in, you take on board, and it's there permanently, and then you work on the next one, and so you feel like I'm not really getting as far as I want to get, but it's like, man, you got the rest of your life to work at this thing.
And the Bible says we grow line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, right? And so that's a hard thing. And the one other thing that God dealt with me even this morning in my own personal time is just my own selfishness. Like even in things that we like to excuse as, that's not selfish, that's you wanting to be, when you have integrity around, like the integrity to say at 35 miles, there's quittings off the table, it doesn't matter what it looks like. The same integrity to say, no, this particular thing in my life is not acceptable, or no, how I'm thinking about this is just selfishness. It's not, I'm not doing this because all the excuses we give ourselves to not live holy. And I'm not talking about rules and regulations. I'm not talking about what you drink and what you eat and I'm talking about how you spend your time, how you talk to people, how you judge other things and other people. What kind of things worry you and give you anxiety when you're clearly told that that's sin? Yeah. We make excuses and we act like, oh, you're being radical by thinking that way. Well, I'm called to be who Jesus called me to be and called to change how I think. Romans 12:1-2 says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, you present your bodies a living sacrifice. So there's an implication of life, but there's also an implication of death, because a sacrifice is death. So to die to self, and you've been talking about this a lot, Chad, if you don't die to yourself, and that's why this race is such a great place of that. You die to your flesh and die to yourself over and over and over again. That's easy compared to dying to your flesh on a daily basis in things that are more important and eternal and spiritual. And, I don't have the answer all at once, but the answer is in there. And if we renew our mind to that, I believe with all my heart, God shows us how. I think that's where there's a certain level of success and effectiveness I've experienced. I have the best marriage in the world. I have 4 wonderful kids and now a beautiful grandchild and a daughter-in-law that loves Jesus. So God, just line upon line over the years, God's blessed me with so much because of my obedience on one hand. But the moment you start getting prideful and thinking you've got it all figured out is the moment pride goes before destruction. That's and the Holy Spirit before a fall. So staying humble and hungry for obedience. It's what's his name? Eugene Peterson, who wrote The Message, wrote a book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And it's so powerful. And it just talks about this long pathway of welcoming the principles of God into your life on a daily, normal basis. So I think that's the key.
Gadwall, did you have any overarching kind of big lesson that came out of this that kind of shifted your perspective or made you look at things different or that you're going to carry with you?
Yeah, so for me it was something I'm going to paraphrase, but that y'all have talked about before, but that I read that was really powerful to me when I read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And it was when he was talking about how to be a Christian, how to have faith in God, and all these, all the things that go into being a Christian. And he says, do what you think it would look like, and then eventually, basically, to paraphrase, you'll be a Christian.
He calls it good pretending, right?
Yeah, that's what I didn't remember what he said, but I just called it fake it till you make it Christianity. Like, it was just like, you just do what you think it would look like, and then eventually it'll come in and you'll be doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so that kind of resonated with, like, all right, for instance, like I was talking about my training. Like, I do know some about running, but I don't know enough about ultra running to write a training plan other than just knowing for this one that since I only started in January, I needed to put a lot of miles on my feet to build them up. And also, if you look at, ultra running in general, the best runners, most of them are 35 to 40 because they've had all those years to put miles on their legs. And that's the main thing that ultra running is about how long can you stay on the course and in pain. And so for me, it was, all right, I did that in this race. Like, I just, did what I knew to do, the small little bit that I knew how to train. I trained that way, and I was successful in what I was trying to do, and I executed the right way. And, like, even when I was in pain and everything, it took me a couple of minutes, but I figured out what I needed to do, and I executed it and got it done. And the same thing with when my daughter was born. Obviously you never know what you're supposed to do with your first child, and you just kind of do what you know to do and just take it a day at a time. And so it's never been that hard because as long as you just break it up, like Blake was making fun of me because we got to mile 73 and I said, hey, Blake, when's the next aid station? And he was like, 84. I said, when's the next one? He said, you don't worry about that one. He was about to tell me what the next one was, and he said, don't you worry about that one. And I was like, I can add that up. I know how long it is. And so it was too late anyways. But it was just knowing that I have enough in me to do the run, to be a father, and both of those things I have not studied near as much as I've studied the Bible. And so knowing that I can figure that out and execute what I want to and what what I felt like I was called to do in that race just gave me an enormous amount of strength and power because I was like, okay, I can just come up with this crap without, with it not being eternal, and God's going to guide me in the direction because it matters to me. What about when it does matter to the kingdom? What about when it is pushing me to execute on Christ's mission? Like, how much more help are you going to get on something like that? And the biggest thing I think at the beginning that I was just saying, and it applies to what I just said as well about spirituality, was my mindset before and my confessions that I was saying on the way down. Usually when I do something hard, I have, I guess, like little phrases that I try to remember in my head. Like you talk about like a mantra or whatever when you did the treadmill race for those who can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, okay, physically, I did, 3 of 7. So I, talked about body, soul, and spirit. And so I said, God made my legs to run 100 miles. And I believed that. And it was 100% in my mind that I could run 100 miles. Like, that was not even a question. God made my heart to endure 100 miles. So cardiovascularly, I'm going to be fine, which obviously you're going to be fine because you're not running that fast if you finish it in almost, barely under 24 hours. Just about anybody can handle that as long as you can stay out there long enough.
Well, you'd be surprised, Caleb. It took me 33 hours to run that one.
Well, it was a lot flatter. It was a lot flatter where I was.
There was no hill. Bridges were the only hills we dealt with. What y'all ran was a lot harder for sure.
I just had to stop you there because finishing in less than 24 hours is a pretty dang good pace to set for yourself.
Yeah, and then God gave me a will to never quit was the last thing, and so I just broke it down and I was like, okay, how can I fail at this? And so for me, the overarching lesson was I can do it for that. I can do it for everything else. And like Dad said, you got to figure out how it's going to work out for you and process that. And so obviously I'm still processing that. I'll be doing that. I'll be processing that till the day I die. And I'll just keep adding it when I continue to do these races because there was just too many lessons learned. It was too much of a microcosm of life to not do it again. Like, it was way too awesome what I experienced. And what I'm still experiencing, that's what I was talking to Blake about when I texted him. I said, like, man, the staying present and deliberate part is still going on. Because the back of my calf is, like, when I woke up Monday, the whole thing was black. And I was like, uh-oh. Because I was like, I'm planning on going back to work Tuesday, which I didn't. I went back Wednesday. I still have a little bit of a limp, but it ain't no big deal. But
yeah, he's got a limp.
Well, it's a little limp. But anyways, it just, I can't even remember where I was going. Sorry. No, you're good.
No, I mean,
I used basically how you're having to stay patient.
And
deliberate through recovery.
Yes, exactly. And so, like I said to Blake, it was just about, like icing. I know just doing the things once again, just fake it till you make it. Do the things you know to do, and you'll eventually reap the benefits of doing what you know to do.
Yeah, the race isn't over. Caleb even said that to me, and I mean, it was funny. Your video came up on my phone about after 100. I haven't been able to watch it yet, but like, it's just stupid to not continue that same thought process through recovery so that you're able to go, like, I feel like that's what's happened to me sometimes in other races. There was this big low because I was thinking about I just accomplished this. This time, it's like I have so much to still learn from it. I'm still present in it. And I'm recovering physically. Mostly, just getting used to eating normal again, easing into some lifting and some things I can do, not putting a lot of strain on my legs yet. But Caleb even mentioned that today, I think, about that deliberate, what he's saying right now. And I think that's important that, recovery is just as important so that you're ready for the next thing. And if you don't do that, you don't give your body time to heal and do that, it's stupid to be arrogant and abuse your body and not reward it for what it just finished,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was on Monday when I woke up, like I said, my calf was black, and so I couldn't bend my knee. Well, I couldn't straighten it out or bend it, so it had to stay like right in between, basically, just a slight bend. And so everywhere I walked backwards, and because I had walked enough forwards, evidently, my body said. And so I was like, okay, well, I really don't feel like getting off this couch. But I know if I start icing, I will feel so much better because also my ankles looked like I weighed 450 pounds from all that flexing of that tendon we were talking about earlier on both my legs, but especially the one that I was overcompensating on because my right calf messed up, so my left ankle was the one that was huge. Yep. And so I was like, I got to get in there and ice. I got to be intentional about what I do.
Yep.
If I don't, then I'm just failing myself. Like, why the heck, like Dad said, why would you quit after you already – after you've completed this? Like, you're not back to normal yet. The race ain't over. Your work isn't over. And the awesome thing that I loved about this process is it's not going to be over when I fully recover, because then it's just the next race. And even when I can't run anymore, when I die, it's I'll be doing better stuff then. But I mean, it's a constant thing where you just look. I've always looked one past everything. It's like I told Dad when I was training for this race, I have a tendency to overtrain speed-wise. Like when I was running in high school, the reason I got stress fractures because I ran 6-minute pace every single run or faster, and I didn't need to be doing that. And so I just had to look for next year. Like I had to say, okay, while I was training for this Daytona race, I was like, okay, well, I want to run the Jewel next year. So I guess I need to do this and be easy here, and so take it easy and just put miles on my legs to train for the Jewel. And so that's how I have to look at things, because otherwise I have a tendency to over-push myself.
Yeah.
Just like you were talking about trying to pass people. Like I get very impatient at times.
Yep.
And so, but I definitely got a lot more patient during this race, so that was fun too.
Yeah, that's a unique part of how you're wired, man. Is you know that about yourself, and you know it's okay for you to be thinking, okay, I want to run the Jewel in 2024, so I need to plan back from that and make sure what I'm doing right now is going to set me up for something that's over a year down the road. So that's a unique part of how you're wired. See, it would be detrimental for me to think that way, but I don't have the same problem as you in terms of if all I'm focusing on is the very next thing that's coming. I don't have the problem of overtraining and putting myself in a hole and then destroying everything that's after that, potential for anything that's after that. So it's good that you're aware enough of yourself and the things that you struggle with and the challenges that you faced uniquely, and you're able to project your thought out far enough to reel yourself back in to the point you need to be at and stay healthy for whatever's coming and beyond. Yeah, I love that, man. I really do.
The one other thing that happened at the race, the other thing, I mean, my stomach was an issue, but probably the worst thing was my eye.
Oh, yeah.
I got this scar tissue that, I've always had it. And I have a prescription that has a steroid drop that helps with it. But I put on my sunglasses, and it was so humid and hot, they were fogging up, and they were driving me nuts. So I just turned my hat back around and wore it down lower and took my sunglasses off after I dropped them on the concrete. And we got to there was still a lot of daylight left, and I never go through in daylight without sunglasses. Well, I did in that race, so that was something I failed at. And by the time we were running at night, there's no more of that, but I couldn't open my left eye for more than a few seconds at a time. So I'm blinking, running, looking out of one. So the last in Daytona, we're running down these streets where there's a drive every, 2 or 3 drives every block. So I'm having to run behind John so I can watch his steps, because I can't really see the change in depth. One time I stepped up on a curb because I didn't know it was a curb there. And just little things like that. That really drove, like, at the end of the race when we were taking pictures, I'm like Popeye, and so that
he's looking rough.
So everybody thought I was feeling worse than I was because I was Popeye. And like when I was going to go to work, because I work at a job where, if I'd have had to, I could have sat at the desk and caught up. And so, but I couldn't drive. So it felt like somebody was stabbing me with a knife in my eye on Sunday morning when we were getting ready to leave. And so that was the most miserable part for me. Amy got me that steroid. So by the next day around noon, I was okay. But that was actually the most painful part of everything.
Dang, man. That's rough when you pile on eye pain to the leg pain and the foot pain and everything else you're having to deal with. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds miserable. I can't even freaking stand it when my eyes are watering.
You ain't never ran so far your eye hurt.
No, I haven't reached that point yet. That's legit, man. Well, guys, I really appreciate y'all coming in and taking the time to share the story of both of your first 100-mile race. your finish in under 24 hours. That's a huge accomplishment. And people need to hear stuff like this, and they need to understand, hopefully, why we advocate so much for endeavoring to do things like this. And it's because of these lessons that Paul and Caleb just shared with you guys, and those are things that they can take with them the rest of their lives, and now those are things that they're going to build upon, you know, for as long as they continue trying things that push them outside of what they're comfortable doing. People need to understand that's the reason. And so you want to run the Jewel next year.
Yes, sir.
100 miles.
Yes, sir.
That's awesome, man. That's a great race. What about you, Paul? Have you thought ahead to, you got anything in your mind that?
Yeah, right now, you know, I can't say how appreciative I am of Caleb because it's made running more purposeful for me.
For sure.
You know, I love him. I respect him. Like, he's not my son, just my son. He's another fellow believer and a man.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy that. And so I won't feel as guilty going on long runs when I'm with him. His mom will forgive that a lot more. And so that's a good thing. So I'll definitely be there for him on the Jewel. I'll run, you know, at least the last 30 with him, if not, you know, whatever I'm able to. So I'll stay in shape for that. I want to do the Jewel eventually. Mm-hmm. I may do like the Duncan Ridge and try to do a better next year. I'm really going to focus on Timothy's senior year of cross country and helping that team do what they can do. I'll do something in the fall to just stay where I need to be, but I'm probably looking at doing the Jewel eventually, or maybe another race comes up that's a good 100 in the mountains. I really like the mountains better. I did the 100 down there because I felt like setting a 24-hour goal. That was something that would be reasonable within the wheelhouse of what I could control with the Silver Comet, the training. I could replicate the training for that. I can also do that on the Jewel because it's in our own backyard. I can, you know, so I'll probably do the Jewel eventually. Next year I won't do the Jewel for the 100 because I'm going to focus on being with Caleb and watching him meet his goals there. But I don't know that they'll ever. I also think that I'll eventually do a last man standing race just to push myself and like it be something where I absolutely control how far I go by my own choice and decisions and will. So that's probably something down the road, but I don't have anything thought-wise on the calendar
I was hoping you were going to say you were going to do the Cocodona 250.
No desire to do that at all.
You know, I think Blake, I think me running that race and us doing that film, I think that was bad PR for the race.
Yeah, they probably won't have any sign-ups.
Not a single one of my friends wants to do that race.
I said I'd do it, but it would just have to be when I have the freedom to take a lot of time off of work.
Yeah, for sure.
I probably should be, but I'm not as intimidated by the work that has to be put in as much as the recovery that it's going to take.
Yeah, you got to take
Caleb said that to me when he
you got to take a week off after that one for sure.
I want to share this one scripture that I mentioned earlier, though. This is really where I'm at right now. Make a careful exploration of who you are and the work you've been given. Then sink yourself into that. Don't be impressed with yourself. Don't compare yourself with others. Each of you must take responsibility for doing the creative best you can with your own life. So to me, it's all about finding what that next creative best is for me. And that's in Galatians chapter 6, verses 4 through 6 in the Message. And, you know, I just want to say thank you to Blake and Chad for having this platform because it's fed Caleb significantly. It's fed me significantly. And, you know, a lot of at the inception of all of this, it's easy for the bones to get dry, right? It's easy for things in our life to get weary so that they die or that weeds grow up around them and all of those kinds of things. So to maintain life and to maintain effectiveness, you have to always try to challenge yourself to grow. And I would not be. I told Blake when he came down there, I said, well, it's your fault I'm in this stuff anyway. It's a good thing you came down here. So I appreciate you guys. I really do. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to process this together. It meant a lot to us, even just coming over here thinking about being able to be a part of what you guys do. And so thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, when I texted Blake, because Dad told me to text him about possibly doing the podcast, I said, I don't even care if like y'all have time for the podcast. I just want to have a conversation with you two because y'all have done 100 milers and you've interviewed enough people. Blake's been there for enough interviews that y'all can ask questions that I haven't asked myself. And I know that'll just really invest in me even more than what y'all have already invested. And so it just grew me even more having this conversation. So I wanted to thank both of y'all for taking time out of your Saturdays to have a conversation with us.
Yeah, man. Well, we're honored. It's always I've been looking forward to hearing the story, and you know, that is one of the greatest things about a podcast is you sit down and you have conversations and you really talk through things in a very deliberate way, and you set aside the time, and we don't even put a time limit on it. We just go as long as we want to go, and that people don't do that in normal life. I mean, how many times you sit down with your buddies and have a 2+ hour long conversation about something that's important? Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't make the time to do that.
We do it on runs.
Yeah, you do. You get to do it on runs. Yeah, that is a good point. But your average person is like, and you miss so much value because you don't have a good after actions report. You don't make the time to sit down and talk through it, and that's been one of the most valuable things for me personally about the podcast. And yeah, it's come a long way since we were in your basement, wasn't it, Paul?
That was fun, wasn't it?
With a broken mic.
Yeah, Paul was one of our first people that we wanted to interview on the 3 of 7 podcast long time ago. Blake and I had bought us a $70 microphone that you just set in the center of the table and everybody sat around it, and you kind of leaned forward when you had something to say, you know, because there was only one microphone. And we drove over to Paul's house. He set aside time. We set aside time. We didn't have anywhere to do a podcast. So Paul was like, oh, yeah, well, I have a basement. So we get down in the basement. We plug this thing up. We get ready for the to sit down and have the talk we wanted to have, and that microphone wouldn't work.
Yep.
So we just had to shut the whole operation down. That's how it started. That's how it started. That was in the very beginning, man. It's wild.
I do want to. The one person that's not here, John Hogue, out in California. He took me to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
I met him at the Proving Ground, and I did the Proving Ground mission at a time in my life where I just finished. I'd written a book. I'd done some things. I'd kind of plateaued it to a point, and I kind of made myself. I kind of had to make myself take advantage of that opportunity and humble myself to be led. And that's where I met John. And, man, we just hit it off the first night. And just his investment in my life, I can't even understand why somebody would fly from Arizona down to Daytona and run a 100-mile race and pace us and lead us. Caleb said at the last little part, we kind of stopped and walked a little bit, gave each other fist bumps to get ready to go to the finish. And John was like, we did it, men. And Caleb made the comment to him, you took all the pressure off of us by pacing and leading us through that. And, it's amazing to have that kind of brotherhood and friendship. And so I just want to thank John Hogue and his wife July for their investment, and even his 3 children, because he's investing in other people. And I just pray that God returns back to him and to y'all all that y'all poured into our life, because we've definitely been reaping some benefits.
It is really wild. I mean, to me, that's one of the most unique aspects of 3 of 7 project. When you compare it to all the other podcasts, all the other, and 307 Project is way more than a podcast, but when you compare it to all the other brands, all the other things that are out there kind of in the same space that we're in, one of, or if not the most unique aspect of what has been done is the real, tangible friendships and relationships that have been formed out of this. And I got to see it. I got to see it last weekend at the race that I was running, where you've got, a dozen people that have come together to support each other, and these people are coming from all over the country, and they've all been connected by way of 307 Project. And it's like, how on earth, man? We could have never imagined that or forced that, or it's just somehow it's just happened. And it's really, really wild to see it. It really is. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show here. Paul, where can people find you and follow you?
I guess they have to go to Rockmart 1572.
Are you off of Instagram?
Yeah, my wife, they can find my wife, Amy Wilder, on Facebook.
What the crud, Paul?
Hey, you got to talk your own game.
Where can people get your book, man?
That's on Amazon. It's True North, Living and Leading on Purpose. And Donald Paul Wilder, my full name. That's the easiest way to search that and find it. It's still on Amazon. I've got a website, dpwilder.com. They can also get it off of there. But predominantly the easiest, quickest way is to get it off of Amazon. And then, obviously my email, champs4cj@att.net, is one way people have connected with me through 307 for the devotional I send out and those kinds of things. But, I'm not trying to necessarily be off the grid, but I don't really, if I connect.
Well, it's all good. You gave me the answers I wanted. Your website, your book.
That's it.
You even gave me your email. That's a
He almost gave his address.
That's a brave thing.
That's what I was thinking when you started saying that. I was like, whoa.
I don't care. I ain't got nothing to hide. But Amy, that's really the email Amy checks all the time. So I really just put all that pressure on her.
That's outstanding. What about you, Caleb?
I'm on Instagram, but honestly, I can't remember my handle. I think it's like Caleb Wilder 7 or something. But, I mean, usually, with the 307 community, obviously I go by Gadwall Shoveler, so.
Good luck finding Caleb, guys. If you want to follow him, good luck. You just got to do your best.
Yeah, exactly. I don't really do that much entertaining stuff, but I post stuff every now and again.
Outstanding, man. All right. Well, thank you guys again for tuning in, and Lord willing, we'll talk to y'all next week. Love y'all. Nuff said.